What's going on, everybody? This is Moose and Brian here from OccupyFantasy.com at OccupyFantasy on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I am your host, Moose, at CFB_Moose on Twitter is where you can find me. I'm co-founder and data guru here at OccupyFantasy.com, alongside Brian at BrianJesterFF on Twitter. This is the $1 Million Mission, Week 6 review. How's it going, Brian?
What's up, Moose? Week 6, where the chalk finally failed, and I didn't capitalize. I know you capitalized, but yeah, we all thought it was impossible. The whole world thought it was impossible. Goes to show it's not impossible. So yeah, that hopefully should give us some more confidence moving forward that NFL DFS is not solved, and we still have plenty of opportunities to make a lot of money.
Exactly. So if you don't know, if you're new here, you can say hello or not. We don't judge either way. If you just want to watch, that's perfect. And we're here to break down Brian's lineups, how he did. We're fully transparent here on this show. So let's take a look at how other pros did and what some of the winners of some contests did, and some questions and answers and some goofs and memes along the way. So let's start off. Let's kick it up to first one up on the list is Brian and I are partnered in the DraftKings Pick'em. And we were in the Survivor. That's why it says eliminated. And I still don't like you, Brian, that you have this every single week. It pains me
Keep
to
us
see.
humble, man. Humble beginnings.
Exactly. But on Pick'em, we have 10 total entries. We picked Denver, Carolina, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Tampa Bay, San Francisco, and Philadelphia. For the record, there's a little over 4,000 entries. Didn't do so hot, Brian. But I guess silver lining is we're still hovering around that 50% range, which I think I'm okay with.
Me too, but I think this goes back to even like it's a very DFS comparison because half the teams we picked were popular, and we didn't really like a lot of teams this week, and unfortunately, we already used our skip. And honestly, if it comes down to it, and you're not sure it's 50-50 coin flip, or even slightly less than a coin flip, just take the lower owned option, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was no, we were scrambling a little bit Sunday morning to figure out the teams we wanted to take, but why should we take a team that's 50%, 40%? Although I will say, we went 3 and 4 with our 7 teams that we selected, and 2 of those 3 were the popular teams. So maybe it was actually good in the long run that we ended up taking those popular teams because it was actually our low-owned teams that did terrible. So
Yes, because the chalk never fails. Yep. So we're gonna keep chugging along on that. Hopefully, Brian, I think one of these weeks we're gonna get a 7-0, and that'll really shoot us up the leaderboard. And
please.
go from there. Let's take a look at what's the next image. This is Brian's tickets. Again, Brian, you're very good at finishing second place in ticket contests. Still just that one King of the Beach, nothing from the FFWC nor the WFFC.
Yeah, so you're getting a lot of second and third place finishes when your host texts you and says, "Brian, get some more tickets so I can see you in San Diego." It's like, dude, I'm trying. Literally, he texted me this last week. So yeah, I'm trying. And I will say what's not shown on screen here is the FanDuel Fan Championship, which is something we always implore our members to try to get tickets to. It's a $250 end of season GPP on FanDuel, $1 million to first. It's normally 16,000 entrants. Pretty realistic chance at $1 million. They run these qualifiers every single week and all different price points, all the way down to a quarter. And I've been racking those up. I got nearly 50 tickets there, which is
Nice.
if you you do the math, that's over 12,000 in entries there, and I got some other
Nice.
smaller tickets on DraftKings. So even though the live finals aren't going great, the regular satellite game is still going pretty well, and I'll do the total ROI for that once that GPP happens. I think it's early December, the week before the WFFC. So
Okay.
yeah, still plugging away at that, and yeah, it just goes to show that you can still win satellites. It's just really hard to win the live final satellites.
Absolutely. And then if we take a look at your classic results, still crushing small field, plus 9.8% over there. 150 Max Classic and Showdown, around 72, 75% respectively. That's still creeping up a little bit, which to me, from an outsider, Brian, shows that you're kind of getting close. You're getting there, just not getting to that top yet.
Yeah, feeling pretty good about the process. So I feel like every Saturday night, Sunday morning, I feel really good about the 150 max process. And yeah, small field plus 9.8%. This is the range we should be seeing. And to be honest, I don't feel like I've played that well in small field until recently. So I think this could be a lot higher. Just looking back last year, my small field number was somewhere in the 20%, 25% range. So I think as more data under the belt and get more comfortable with the process, I think that'll continue to increase. But yeah, that's why I'm hammering that so much. Again, you look at the total dollar amounts compared to the other ones. Ideally, if I can get that to 20% ROI, that can cover for any, even if I have a losing year in 150 max, hopefully the small field can cover the rest. So, but admittedly, the small field, the big bump this week came from FanDuel Showdown, which I've been playing the monster over there. It's the 333 entry, normally 3 max, sometimes 4 max, and we'll pull up a contest here in a bit. But the lineup construction we outlined in the plug is just super solid. It's really back tested, and the field makes a lot of mistakes in the small field over there in Showdown. So yeah, I got first on Thursday this past week in week 6 for 10K, and then tied for first last night for 7,500. So yeah, 17.5K in winnings just in the 2 slates, and feel really good about that because not winning much else outside of that, but do feel really good about that process over there.
Definitely. And I actually, not to toot my own horn, but I guess also in a bad way, Brian, you and I were talking, and I actually got second in the $3 3 max for a pretty big hit for my bankroll at least. But as I was telling you, I originally had that lineup, and all across all my other lineups, it was a Cincinnati stack, and then I went ahead and changed it because I did like Tampa Bay more than Cincinnati. I thought there was overall better plays. And if I didn't change that, I win 12,000 instead of 1,000. So
that's the thing you can't really, unless you have like the most the most refined process to where you're picking out, or you're like automatically entering specific lines in specific contests, or what, or you have something, right? That's what's going to happen. The random CSV upload variance is what I call it, and there's been many times for me. But the lineup you made was just an incredible lineup because you did the Joe Burrow stack we talked about on the Saturday show. So speaking of that, as we talk about every week here, I normally play 6 quarterbacks, right? I only played 5 this week. There was only 5 stacks I really liked, 4 of which were from the 2 popular games, and then Tom Brady was also popular. So I really didn't have Mahomes ended up sub 5%, but overall the game environments weren't really unpopular. So believe me, I was looking for other ones. I was considering Minnesota. We talked about Cincinnati. I should have played Cincinnati. That won a lot of big GPPs. Even though, because it feels bad on the weeks where you force it and it just doesn't go off, and you're like, well, shit, I wasted 16, 17% of my lamps doing that. But we know the upside when it does hit is on weeks like last week when the chalk game environments fail and one of those go off, you're really not competing with anybody to get to the top.
Yeah, and again, I told Ed I toot his horn when he makes calls like Deion Jackson gets 2 touchdowns. Again, Ed will be right twice a day. Is that what they say? That the saying is? And but no, what I was going to say with the bigger picture is, I'm a huge Cincinnati's fan. Every single thing Cincinnati related, I'm on push notifications on Twitter. I wake up to probably 30 Bengals tweets. It's the first thing that I read every morning. So I know the Bengals team in and out. So when they're in a smash spot, I definitely like to play them. I really thought they were in a great spot. That's why they were in one of my 3 max contests. Brian, we talked about it on Saturday where there was only a limited number of players that could go off in that game stack. So I probably should have, in hindsight, 2-0 probably would have been better once Higgins was in, but I kept it 3-0 with Boyd. And I guess the bigger picture for that is we talk about it on Showdown and maybe even in some niche sports as well. But if you really follow your team, you're a huge fan. I know you might be a huge Commanders fan or Giants fan or whoever fan, and you know your team in and out, and you can be realistic with your team. It's a big if. You can definitely tell when they're in smash spots and when they can go off, and you can use that as a part of your process, sort of that qualitative to quantitative data.
For sure, and to that point, Niramata, who is our PGA writer for those who know him, he's kind of struggled with that too, where it's so many different slates he could play, and he really wanted to really refine the slates he was playing this football season. And he's a Chargers fan for a really crazy reason. If you guys want to know, you can ask him yourselves. But he's a Chargers fan, so he's only been playing AFC West showdowns, and because he follows the Chargers closely, he knows the rotations. And he's figured I can get an edge on the competition here, especially on the smaller ones, right? Like the afternoon ones. Like he had a big hit week 1 or week 2 when DeAndre Carter scored. He had him as a captain,
Mm.
and it was like no one else had him as a captain. He's like, well, I've been following the team and stuff. So he's playing afternoon Chargers showdowns. So I think it's a really good move. You know, as much information as we can give you with all of our content, you following a specific team, it's moves. It's like professional bettors who only follow a specific college basketball conference, right? It's just,
Yeah.
there's so much information out there. Narrow your focus, and you normally will see better results quicker that way.
I remember my fiance's best friend when she went to college in Virginia Tech. We would always be talking about Virginia Tech basketball. So anytime there was that, like Virginia Tech would be on a rogue like Tuesday day showdown, I would be like, yo, we were definitely hammering this for when college basketball was like $50 the first contest, but did pretty well in that. But yes, so that was my highlight of the stream that I wanted to mention. If you really want to focus on something, you can definitely use that to your advantage. But I do see we have some people here in the chat. Really quick, Rick Gale says, thanks for your help. Glad you are here, Rick, and glad that you were successful. Ed says, what's up? Picked the Colts this week, and they're definitely, you were right once, Ed. Not going to give it to you twice. Ed said, or Thomas says, had a great week, winning over $200 in tickets between MMA and NFL. Thanks to you guys. That's awesome, Thomas.
Very sick. Love to hear that. I'm more excited to hear people win tickets than I am cash. Obviously, want you to win big, like Dot Bets did in the next comment. But yeah, tickets are great.
He said, what's going on? Appreciate the Bengals stack advice. Had a spike week, so good job, Dot Bets. First week on the job, and gets a spike week. See how that goes.
Yeah, it's the occupy. We rub off on people. You get close to the luck. It rubs off on you. It has to. You got no choice.
And Matt says, figured my team, the Steelers, were going to get smashed. First time I was mad at Brady for losing.
Dude, that was. I mean, even the numbers didn't bear it out, because we worry about pressure and stuff, but they overwhelmed the offensive line. The offensive line made so many issues, and Brady's fucking washed. So I don't know. It was a good spot. We're gonna play that 10 times out of 10. Now I'll just save some lines for the Bengals next time.
Definitely. But Brian, you did talk about you have been doing well in that FanDuel monster. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to FanDuel, and let's see if this works. That does work. Cool. So I put up two of your lineups from the same contest because pretty great. It's like in Keno when you should get your money back for getting last place. You got 99th out of 100 and first out of 100. Pretty hard to do.
Hell yeah.
So I'm gonna give you a clap for that.
Thanks, Moose. Yeah, I mean, it goes to show you play. That's what you if you can play 3 entries, you play 3 entries. You play them 3 differently most of the time. Give yourself one chance, because it's such top heavy payouts. So yeah, I'll take 3 shots at first, and one of them super failed. One got there at 10K, and I'd like slates like that where it's pretty clear who's gonna get the ball most of the time. We have a pretty good idea of the game script, and you don't have to. In small field, I think is a big concern a lot of people have. Is like, does this lineup make sense? And yeah, you want it to make sense to some degree, but you don't need to be perfect, and you don't need to have the perfect game script in small field. You just need to beat 100 people. So to me, like, if you play Justin Fields at captain, to win the largest GPP, you probably normally would want 2 pass catchers. We've seen that even for rushing quarterbacks. But for me, it's like, am I gonna play St. Brown or Komet or even the optimal Dante Pettis? Like, am I going to play those guys in small field and just hope that they catch 1 pass for 50 yards for a touchdown? It's like, I could, but I'd rather just save that for large field. Why not just play Fields? I know he's going to get rushing points, likely score the most on the slate. I know he's going to throw to Mooney, and I'll figure out the rest of the lineup. I don't necessarily have to play 2 receivers with this guy, or even like some of these other lineups that I won, especially like last night, double kicker. Doesn't make a ton of sense in large field. We've spoken at length about that. But for small field, even though it's anti-correlated, like, it gives you a pretty high floor, and you can figure out the rest of your lineup that way. So that's and to me, I mean, this lineup does make sense outside of that, right? Because Fields has to throw more than he normally does. And I think a lot of people say, oh, well, defense versus quarterback doesn't make a ton of sense. But you think about I mean, how often do we talk about this? How crazy that matchup was, right? Moose on in Monday, where yes, Chicago's offense, they don't pass a ton, but if he's going to be forced to pass more, that's more potential sack attempts that the Commanders' defense can rack up, and he can get there on rushing attempts even if the defense bottles him up in the passing game. So to me, this actually did make a ton of sense, and to me, it was a super high floor, high ceiling lineup, and fortunately wasn't duped.
Exactly. Yes, that's why you showed this one and not the one from last night. But but yeah, and I do actually want to make one quick point that you mentioned is you wouldn't play these contests in large field, and Brian, I think we can also take a look at large field and how can we apply that to these small field contests where I've been tracking FanDuel. My eyes bleed every Wednesday when I have to go through 600 pages of FanDuel pages because they don't do CSVs, but and I've been pointing out kickers are you play kickers and defenses and it's the most square dumb thing. If you told me 3 years ago we'd be locking kickers in our lineups, then I would probably slap you, but the game has changed and you can learn. You kind of get set trends. What's this field doing, and over expectation, under expectation, and you see kickers are doing a hell of a lot better and defense is doing a hell of a lot better. Okay, well, and then you see that their floor's a lot bigger and maybe their ceiling is too. You're like, all right, well, let me start playing these in small field though. And I see on the left here you had a 2-kicker lineup that got last place, but last night you had a 2-kicker that got first, tied for first, and so go ahead.
I was gonna say, no, it's a good point. The thing is, right, the kickers aren't gonna kill you even if they underperform. Like the reason that lineup got 99th place isn't because I had 2 kickers that scored 7. It's because my MVP scored 6 and another guy who scored 1. That's why that lineup got last place. Yeah. If I'd have had those other 2 guys, I'd have cashed still, right, in the first lineup. So they give you a really high floor, and if they perform well, especially on FanDuel because the half-point PPR scoring. Yeah. Right, DraftKings is a little different, but over here, like they're gonna outscore those mid-tier guys, even those 10K guys, pretty often because of the half-point PPR. So, I'll continue to take them at sub 20%, like they've been. Like last night, Hopkins was 14% in here. Dude, I'll take it. Hopefully, the people playing the monster aren't listening to this.
I know, and it's funny. We used to give coaches shit for kicking these long field goals. And now I'm like, okay, hold on. It's 4th and 2. Don't actually go for it. Just kick this 50-yarder and give me 5 points.
I mean, it kills every other contest I'm in.
Yeah.
But this is also another point, Moose. And we've talked about this a little bit, where you play different contest size. And we talk about Nerdy Tenor all the time, right? And he said this on my show, the Emotional Bankroll podcast. He talked about how he tries to play so many different types of contests and sizes of contests. That way, he gives himself as many chances to profit on a slate as he can. And I probably worded that differently than he so eloquently said it. But essentially, if I'm playing small field and cash, and a 20-man and a 50-man and a 100-man and a 200-man and large field, ideally, I get something right. I'm not going all in with the same type of lineup. So for me, right, if kickers do well, I'm probably going to do really well in the FanDuel Monster. If they do really well, I'm also probably going to do really bad in the large field. But if they do bad, my monster is going to suffer more than likely. Maybe I have one lineup that sneaks through, but all my other contests have a chance to spike. So it's about balancing your portfolio of lineups, not just each individual lineup, right? And again, if you're making just one lineup, you can't really do this. But you have a decent amount of allocation. You're playing a few different contest types. Just think about your overall, and this the same goes for MMA too. I talk about this a lot too, where I might fade a guy in 150, but it's so risky that maybe I'll play him in the Thunderdome, or I'll play him in the 555. A good example there, I know a lot of people who don't play MMA, but it's like a main event favorite. I think they have a chance to get outscored and not be optimal, right? I won't play them in the 150, but I'll play them heavily in the 555 or even the Thunderdome, because it's like, okay, even if they win, they're going to score like 80 or 90, and that's a lot. That you can win those contests with those types of performances, but they won't be optimal in the large field because they can get outscored by all these other guys or girls. So that's a really important point, I think, for those of you who do play different contest types, is to think about your exposure as a portfolio and what each individual outcomes mean for the entirety of all the lineups that you're entering. Yeah,
you pretty much hit that on the head there. So let's see here. With the last 10 minutes or so, if you guys have any more questions, go ahead and get them in. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to Fantasy Labs here, contest dashboard, which, Brian, I'm mad at you. You didn't have 150 uniques in Classic.
Well, so that's the thing, right? Like I told you, I played chalky game environments. I'm not surprised. I even put in a rule, min 2 under 20%. But I'm super mad at myself. I mean, when a chalk fails like this, and we'll sort by ownership and look at their points, these should be the weeks that I crush, just given my game style. But I don't stray too far from the field in NFL Classic. I think I can get there with my different exposures and my game stacking. But I should still have tons of outs when a week like this happens. So I'm super disappointed in myself in the ROI here.
Definitely. So if we take a look here, I have sorted by field percentage. I didn't even know this tab existed. But yeah, so sorting here, field, basically 50% of the field had Eno Benjamin, biggest chalk in the world, absolutely failed at only getting 9.5 points.
Here's the thing.
Go ahead.
Here's the thing. He did fail, but you could have won the million with him. The guy in third place had him, right? Like at that price point, that's considered failing, but it's not going to kill you, especially small field. I had 100%. You could win all small field contests with 9 points from a $4,600 running back. So, yes, like he definitely failed and way underperformed for his 18 touches or whatever he got. And I hate to see it, but yeah, if you're fading him, that's what you want to see. And you play a Deion Jackson, you play anybody else, or you play a different construction. Yeah, sure. I think we'll definitely count that as a failure.
Definitely. Tyler Lockett also failed, 30% owned, only 3.7 points.
Seemed unfadable, right? Seemed unfadable. But this goes back. I know it seems like these guys can't fail, but it's a human game. Weird shit happens. They absolutely can fail. Now imagine that 30% of people get a 3-point from their receiver. That you can't win a GPP with.
I like to think of it this way, and this may be like the worst take of all time, so sorry if it is, but it reminds me of like the NFT market. Tyler Lockett, he did well. People are like, okay, he did well. He did well again, and everyone, like literally every single person tweet you could find was just lock Tyler Lockett. He's going to get 30 points. He's going to crush. It's like the NFT market. Just put money in, buy Top Shot cards. You're going to make money. Don't worry about it. It's going to be fine until it doesn't.
Yeah. And then it crashes, and that's what you see these crashes like this for.
Yeah. So I know, Brian, we all talked, and roughly the same price, $200 cheaper. Swap to Kenneth Walker for less ownership and significantly more points. Potentially the same type of ceiling. That's one way that you could do it as well. Really quick, Ed has a question. Says, what's the biggest difference in the $20 and 555 milli winners?
I mean, there's really not much of a difference. The 555 was 5,000 entries, and the $20 is just like 200,000 entries or something. But like in theory, there's not gonna be that big of a difference. Maybe you'll find some weirder lineups sneak through in the $20. I don't even think the $20 winner was that weird this week. So, but we can compare and contrast the two here on the stream.
Okay, cool. And Matt says, did you max one of the cheap chalk running backs?
No, it's probably also why I didn't. I liked all those. I liked most of the guys, and they were just popping in my builds. And as you know, I'm willing to play chalky running backs to an extent. But yeah, this is a tough week overall. Like I know we talked about at the beginning of the season to play you try to go overweight on a 5% running back, and maybe that was Deion Jackson this week. But for me, there was too many guys in good spots to really do that this week. The best way to have differentiated was a different stack, which I did not do. So
definitely. So if we look here, this is the winning Millie lineup. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, brought it back with Kamara, so 2-1 stack. Deion Jackson, Waddle, Brandon Ayuk, who I called on stream, scored 2 touchdowns. Juju, underperforming wide receiver. Robert Tonyan, cheap, low-owned tight end. Arizona defense, less than 1% owned, somehow got there.
And I think playing defense like that, it makes a lot of sense too, because you're hoping that game environment fails because there's so much chalk in it. You just, if that's the case, play a defense from that game. If you played Seattle or Arizona, you'd have done well. So I like that move too. If you're fading a chalky game environment overall, get exposure to the defense then, because then it's just double. It's a correlation for your lineups, right?
Exactly. Yes. It's like a double dip. And again, even if it doesn't go well, I mean, I understand. Like according to this, he won the Millie by what, 9 points. So even if Arizona defense doesn't absolutely go off for 16 points, they go off for 10. They go off for 4.
Yeah.
8. Yeah, 8 or whatever. Anyway, they scored half of what they scored. He still wins.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh man, Burrow at 4%, dude. That's crazy.
Dude, I know. If you want to know a absolutely sickening thing, is every Saturday I make like my single entry lineup. I just throw stuff together in case of like something actually happens and I have to run. Then I have my lineup. Right. I went back and looked at what that lineup was, and it would have scored 230. And I was like, and I'm like, well, I'm glad I didn't play the Millie this week, because if that was the
Yeah.
case, I would have been very upset. But yeah. But hey, again, and we talked about it too, Brian. If luck of the draw, you were just, if you just didn't, for some reason, I like the lineup. Oh, I'm going to change it just for no reason. Then that's one thing. But I was going to change it anyway, so there's no sense of me getting mad.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, so I did want to take a quick look at your exposures. And Dot Best has a question, says, when was Lattimore ruled out? Was it Sunday morning? Maybe reason for low ownership?
He was ruled out on Friday, so we knew, the field knew. They were everyone, myself included, was enamored with the other two game stacks that had totals over 50 points. Remember, this Cincinnati game only had a total of 44 or something, so no one's really willing to play these other stacks. So props to those who did.
Yeah. So if we take a look here, I'm taking a look at your exposures, and just naming off some of your highest leverage: Darrell Henderson, Kenneth Walker, Mahomes, Mixon, Gage, Juju, Minnesota defense, Claypool, Arizona. Brian, I know this is a review show, but maybe for the future, I think we're kind of done with. I think you and I complained so much about Arizona last week than anybody else.
I'm back. It took me a day to recover, but I'm back. I'll be on it this week. No, they're playing Thursday night, so I can't. But they got D-Hop back. Through week 8, we'll be firing some Arizona stacks.
Definitely. And then if we take a look at just trying to see, where was it?
Wait, real quick, Moose, while you're looking at this, right? Like, I was over leveraged on some chalky spots, right? Like even like Gage in that popular stack, Juju in that popular stack, Kyler in a popular game, Brady, who had way more than the field did. So, I like the way I played it. Like if I'm gonna play it heavy and stack it in ways that the field's not gonna stack it. Just really wish I saved myself an out in case both those games failed.
It happens, man. That's why we do these shows. The question I did want to ask, and I want to get your opinion on, you were underweight on Ramondre Stevenson. You had 23%. Field had 40%. Kind of take me through why having so much of a chalky player but less. So it seems like if he goes off, you kind of have to get weird for those lineups to shoot up, or was he more owned than what you thought he was going to be? I'm just kind of taking me through what your thought process was on Stevenson.
Yeah, I thought he was gonna be like 30. 40 was surprising. Things happen, right? I mean, you remember we talked about, everyone's like, oh my god, ownership's flatter now and the field's sharper, and they're like, no, dude, it's 10 games on the slate, and people just played it appropriately and they hammered the shit out of everything. So no, it's not, ownership's not sharper or flatter. It's just people, depends on the number of games. So people saw Ramondre and they hammered Ramondre. 40 still is more than I expected. I thought 27 to 30% I would be around what the field had. Obviously wasn't thrilled when he had 40, when he checked in at 40. So yeah, and then Lockett, I was way under, obviously, but I exclusively played him in game stacks. I know that people, if they played him, we're going to use him as one-off. And if I surround him in a correlated environment, I thought that would be different. Same with Diggs. Only played him in game stacks. Anybody else that fits here? Yeah, those three, even Mike Evans, like those three guys that were popular that I was under on, only played him in game stacks. Didn't play him any other way. So if they went off, hopefully the rest of the game goes off. But when they go off like Diggs did, and the rest of the game doesn't go off, I'm not gonna win when that happens. So
exactly, yeah. And I actually want, and if you look here, even though Diggs was popular, an Allen Diggs combo was only done by 5.5% of the field. I was trying to find where.
That's still a lot though, right? For like a 2-0 stack, that's still pretty chalky for a 2-0 stack.
Yeah, and then 4% for a Geno Tyler Lockett. So not a lot, but enough. But again, you're condensing a 20-30% player into 4% with correlation. So
I know. So obviously I needed chalk this week, but after the 1:00 games, I had a lineup that had Stevenson, it had Chase Claypool, had 20 points, it had Jamar Chase, and it had Tyreek Hill. Ooh. And so it had like all the spots were just flames, and it had a 3-1 Seattle stack with mostly chalk. I was like, if the chalk actually performs, I'll probably win a GPP. And they combined for less than like Chase scored by himself. So didn't work out, but it goes to show that you can still play some low-owned guys with those stacks. Just goes back to the point. I'm still not over it. Clearly, that got to play some other stacks as well.
Definitely. We're going to answer these 2 questions, go through the last couple reports, and then we'll get up out of here unless there's any more questions. Rick says, Brian, I hand build my FanDuel Millie Maker. Is there any advice you could give me to help me build better lineups?
Yeah, Rick, have you read the strategy guide on the site? That summarizes how we feel about large field contests like the Millie on FanDuel. If you have read it and you have further questions, let me know. But that's the best I can say. It game stat correlate, play some low owned players, underperforming wide receivers. That's how I've gotten close in the FanDuel Millie a couple times, top 7 twice in the FanDuel Millie, using that formula. So check that out. It's in the. I'll throw it in the chat just in case you haven't seen it yet. But that's definitely the best way to build. If I can find it.
And while you're saying it, wasn't a question, but .bet says, I've used strict mode only this season, and the one-off and stack-only feature makes it so much easier to determine what way you want to build lineups.
Yeah, I've literally never seen that in other builders. This is one of the best things I've seen. So, like, you only want to use Lockett, who's super popular in correlated game environments. You can just put him in the stack option. If you leave one-off off, you won't end up as a one-off in your lineups. I mean, it gives you so much control. For, like, people like us who are, like, especially me, are just perfectionists and want to get every single thing right with their lineups, the amount of control you have with the builder is crazy.
Exactly. Let's take a look at the reports here. Again, use your salary. People use a lot of salary. And still, people are playing tight end and flex. 17% of all lineups and 17% of the top 1% were tight end, which seems very high. Running back was, which we talked about over the weekend. 44% of the top 1% had a running back in their lineup. So,
yeah, tight end did really well. I don't even know how. Like, I guess Mark Andrews did, but a lot of people in the top 1% had Robert Tonyan, who was like 2% owned. And I saw some double tight end stacks with him, which I don't even remotely know how you end up on something like that. But yeah, as I was scrolling through some lineups, I saw a bunch of Tonyan with like Andrews, Tonyan with like Kelsey, and I was like, what the fuck is going on?
And if we take a look at the duplicates tab, we'll take a look at...
You'll see my name, apparently.
231 users duped this lineup, which it's just straight chalk. There's not really much else to say. It's just straight chalk.
Yeah, basically a cash lineup. So, Allen, Steph Diggs. Yeah, it's the chalkiest players possible, right? And those are the lineups that you're looking to avoid getting crushed by in small field. Which, by the way, I do want to just mention really quickly before we get out here. I know it's 9:03, but I did mega stack this week in small field, and you know that would have overcome a lot of the chalk. Just so happens that all of it failed, and so obviously mega stacks clearly failed. So did terrible in small field and classic this week, but you know, still love that approach. Just didn't. Here's the key: you can mega stack, but the stack still has to perform well in order for it to be successful. So
exactly, yep. So, Brian, any last comments, concerns, or anything before I take us out of here?
I don't know, man, but I'm listening to you on Saturday. Whatever off the wall stack you got. I know you mentioned the Atlanta game that went off in Brandon Ayuk. That was prophetic, to say the least. But I'm gonna listen to you and see
what word did you just say?
Prophetic. Like a prophet. The adjective form of being a prophet.
Okay, nice. Okay. Today
accurately describing or predicting what will happen in the future. You're prophetic. You were prophetic on Saturday. So we're gonna find these off the wall game stacks. Again, if every game sucks, so we can find the one that goes off, then you know we're printing money. So
definitely, yep. So that'll do it for tonight's show. Again, Brian and I will be back on Saturday to break down the upcoming slate, and we'll have stuff going on throughout the day. Again, NBA season just started today. Don't forget to keep your Iron Man streak alive. But until next time, Moose and Brian from OccupyFantasy.com